It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
All right, let's just do this, get it over with, and we can all go to sleep. Welcome to Rico Brogna. The season is over. The Mets get eliminated by the LA Dodgers. And you freaking knew from, I would say, the second or third inning on where this was going. You just knew. And look, I want to warn you about something. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. I thought about this game all day. I think most of us did as Met fans. I wasn't sure. Like, if they lose game 6, which they did, am I going to be angry? Am I going to be mad? Am I going to be sad? Like, what is the main emotion one will have after a long season ends? And I will tell you, even though it may sound angry and mad, I think the main emotion I have is a little sadness, a little like, wow, this freaking season is over. Wow. There were moments where I thought this is how the Mets are going to win a World Series with all this freaking magic. So I think overall, as we sit here mourning the end of a season, the death of a season, to me, there is a lot of sadness. It doesn't change the fact, and I said this a few weeks ago, and I really believe this, I don't know what the future holds. None of us know what the future holds. And while the Mets may have a great future and a bright future, and they've got a billionaire owner, and they've got good young players that are being developed, some of which had some very impressive Octobers, I also know that these opportunities, the opportunities of having a little bit of magic along with talent, they don't come around often. So this, to me, was a missed opportunity. That's the way it feels. And that's where the sadness comes from. I remember when the 99 season ended, and I tweeted earlier that this sort of kind of felt like 1999, the series against LA. I know very different than the Atlanta series, but trying to come back, getting to game 6 in LA, winning a game 5 at home, kind of the miracle of the entire season. But I remember when I went to bed that night after Kenny Rogers walked Andrew Jones, I was very sad. I didn't think about the future. I was just sad. Like, man, there was a lot of magic on this team. This could have been the year. It should have been the year. And I think as this season ends and we watch Francisco Alvarez, tough to kill him. I mean, how good was he since everybody want his ass benched? But when Francisco Alvarez hit that little tapper to Chris Taylor, and it felt like that ground ball to second base took forever. Because, like, you could see it. You know Taylor's going to field it. You know he's throwing to first base. But there's that small part of you that's holding out hope. Maybe he's going to throw it away. Maybe the magic's going to continue. But as that 10-minute ground ball to second base occurred, I did start to kind of feel that sadness of this season ending. I wanted to make that clear. I feel mostly sad. Now I'm going to be angry, and I'm going to bitch because this game against the Dodgers, a bullpen game, came down to the fact that the Mets needed to hit. I'm not going to bitch about Sean Manaea. I'm not going to bitch about Carlos Mendoza's bullpen management. I'm not going to bitch about, hey, maybe Edwin Diaz should have been allowed to pitch a third inning. We'll get to all of that. But what this comes down to, and you knew this going in, and you kind of knew this from game 1 on in this series against LA, is that if the Mets were going to win this series, they weren't holding down this offense. That was never going to happen. And they never did. They were going to have to score. They were going to have to score consistently. They were going to have to score often. And when they were given opportunities, some because they created it by putting rallies together, others by Dodger miscues, they're going to have to take advantage of it and score. And you could tell early on, go back to the first inning of this game. Michael Kopech can't throw a damn strike. Good job by Francisco Lindor. Draws a walk. No complaints. Then Kopech throws it away. And Lindor's on second. And I'm sitting there, I think we're all sitting there saying, okay, at the bare minimum, at the absolute bare minimum, you got to get that run to score. Nimmo hits a ground ball to second base. Great. Okay. Runner on third, less than 2 outs. And that was my bar at that moment. Just score the run. Excuse me. I'm battling a cough. I thought I was just run down. I may be sick. Who the hell knows? Nobody cares, and that's fine. Vientos strikes out, and then here's our guy, Pete Alonso. And credit to Pete Alonso, because what Pete has done, even though he hasn't hit for the highest batting average in this postseason, even though Pete Alonso has hit a couple of very big home runs for this team, what has been very impressive about Pete, even before he hit that home run against Milwaukee, is the at-bats that he's had, the quality of the at-bats that he's had, his ability to draw a walk, his ability to lay off sliders in the dirt. Pete has battled. And if you put the ball in play, good things can happen. The Mets pulled off like this miracle in Game 5 where they never struck out, which is like unbelievable considering the Mets at one point in September was striking out like 13, 14 times a game. But when Pete hits that little dipper that falls towards shortstop or towards second base, and I'm yelling, Pete, move your fat ass. That's what I'm screaming at the TV. Pete, move your fat ass. Never for a second did I think Pete would break it out or beat it out. And luckily, and this is where the Mets missed opportunities, Chris Taylor makes a bad throw. And so the Mets score that run in the first inning because the Dodgers gave it to them. They gave it to him when Kopech walked Lindor. They gave it to him when Kopech threw a wild pitch. And they gave it to him when Chris Taylor didn't make, I'm not going to say a routine play, but a play he should make. They gave Pete Alonso a hit. BS. Pete Alonso should have been thrown out by 1.5 miles. But once that happens, once the Mets are gifted a run, and I love Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea's had a great year, and trust me, we will have many Rico Brognas over the next few days and weeks debating and discussing the merits of bringing him back along with many others. You knew against this lineup, with Manaea admitting in his last start he hit a wall, you weren't getting 7 scoreless out of Sean Manaea. You needed to be high or naive to think that was going to happen. So when the Dodgers give you a run and they give you another runner on second base, you have to take advantage of it. It was so important in that top of the first inning that it wasn't just 1-0, but it was 2 or 3-0. Winker has a great at-bat, and then Marte goes after the first pitch and flies out to right field. That was warning sign number 1. Because if the Dodgers are going to make a miscue, which they did in the top of the first inning, you have to take advantage of it. As far as Manaea is concerned, look, this was obvious, and I think Mendy was in a very tough spot. Because when you have a pitcher that admits after his Game 2 start, and I apologize, we didn't spend enough time even talking about that Manaea made the comment, hey, I think I hit a wall. And I understand why he has. Like the Mets signed a lot of guys to 1-year deals, a lot of guys that needed to prove they were healthy. And they all went out and had very solid years staying healthy, and then subsequently threw more innings than anyone could have imagined. So it is understandable that Sean Manaea was hitting a wall. Like, I get it. It's understandable if Luis Severino, after barely pitching, Yankee fans will tell you, for the last 6 years, it's understandable if he hit a wall. So I think that Mendy was in this very tricky spot of trying to find a way for Manaea to get through the first inning, even get through the second inning, because the bullpen is the shits. Like, and that's the ultimate problem. Like, if you want to define why they lost Game 6, why they lost this series to LA, failing with runners in scoring position is certainly up there in bold and is the first thing I'm bitching about. But the second thing is their pitching was just dunzo. Their bullpen was never great to begin with, and their starting pitching that was so good for like a 2-month stretch was just done. They had no answers. That's why, like, I commend Carlos Mendoza for how aggressive he was with Edwin Diaz. The only mistake I think he made with that is that Diaz was so economical in his 2 innings, I would have let him start a 3rd inning. But you go through the first inning with Manaea. He gives up the leadoff hit to Ohtani where he just could not put him away. He strikes out Mookie Betts great. Got a bunch of swing and misses early in this game. Gives up the base hit to Teoscar Hernandez. So the Teoscar Hernandez play, that's another one that jumps out at me. The Dodgers give the Mets a run in the top of the first inning on the miscue by Chris Taylor, and the Mets really don't take advantage of it. Teoscar Hernandez, who has done nothing in this LCS coming into this game, made the comment, we're better off clinching at home. We're all going to get to celebrate. Hits a ball that, we all thought was gone, and he doesn't run it out. And it cost the Dodgers another runner in scoring position. And as this is happening, I'm thinking Mojo, Juju. Boy, this should come back and haunt the LA Dodgers. And it didn't because of that Tommy Edman at-bat. And look, you give Tommy Edman a lot of credit. I know he's a guy we're all going to hate now. He's David Eckstein of 2024, that little schlub who's a nice little player, don't get me wrong, but plays like a superstar and sticks it up our ass. But Manaea's ahead 1-2. And I think he threw that sweeper low and away, and Edman just reaches for it, pulls into the left field corner. That was an absolute killer. That was the play of the game. It really was, because when you look at the first inning, the mistakes the Dodgers made, the opportunities they gave us, and we could not take advantage of it. Now, to Manaea's credit, he gives up that 2-run hit to Tommy Edman, and this could have been Al Leiter 1999 all over again. I bring up the 99 comparison. Al Leiter didn't get an out in Game 6 of the NLCS, and ultimately, he came out in the first inning of that game. Manaea did a very good job of at least getting through that first inning, and I was with Mendy for allowing him to pitch the second inning, but the pitch count was so high that you knew he's not going long. So I'm with him on this, and I haven't even checked the Rico email. We have to do another episode to do that. I think we're going to need a couple of Ricos to kind of finish this season, and then we got to start looking at the offseason, which is just ridiculous.
Well, I was about to say we do have a few off days coming up, so we should be able to fit those in. The email and the voicemails and whatever else, smoke signals, whatever you want to do, send it our way.
You're right. I thought that once the season ended, we would take a break from the Rico. I was thinking about it as I was walking upstairs to the Rico Brogna studio. We may be potting every day this week. I have to be honest with you. There's a lot. And we don't have an off season. Our off season is going to last a week and a half before the World Series ends, and then it's right into all the free agent decisions they have to make. So we got a lot of Ricos that we'll get to. But did you have an issue sticking with Sean Manaea? Because I thought Mendy was right. I even was okay with him starting the third inning. The problem is, he's ahead of Tommy Edman again, 1-2, and he hits the 2-run home run. At that point, I'm done with Manaea. At that point, you take him out. But I did not personally have an issue with the way Mendy handled Manaea in this game.
It's tough. I really thought that Manaea had to see it through as long as possible, that maybe he'd figure it out. He didn't pitch terribly against Ohtani, and that's one of the toughest outs in the game, right? So if he could do that, he should be able to figure out some of these batters. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. So I was not against sticking with Ohtani. Sticking with Manaea a little bit longer.
Look, I think the other problem is, even though you're in a winner-take-all game and you have to have a quick hook, they don't and didn't have a lot of great options. This bullpen by the end, we've talked all year about the circle of trust, and that's a fun little game through April, May, June, July, August, September. By the time we got to tonight and to these last few games, what the hell was the circle of trust? It was Edwin Diaz. That's it. It's the only guy. You want to say Ryan Stanek? Yeah, he performed well in this game. So I think when Manaea gives up the home run to Tommy Edman, which was, you got to be freaking kidding me. It's bad enough he's hooking a double down the left field line in the first inning. Now this dude's hitting a 2-run home run over the fence in left center field. You got to be freaking kidding me. But at that point, you take him out. And honestly, Mendy ended up going to Diaz to start the fourth inning because it was the top of the order. I was even thinking going to Diaz right then and there in the third inning. I think that's the right attitude and the right philosophy to have, because you are about to fall out of the game. It's 6-1, or at that point, I guess it's 4-1, because then the 2-run home run by Will Smith came a few batters later. So it's 4-1. You're doing everything you can to keep yourself in the game. Everything you can to keep yourself involved, to keep yourself close, and give this offense a chance, especially against a Dodger bullpen. So I loved him going to Diaz. I would have even considered going to him early. And look, credit to Edwin Diaz. There are guys who will go into the offseason, and we're going to remember a lot of what they did in October. So like Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos, what a performance. What an incredible October by Mark Vientos. Not only does he put together the great regular season, locks down third base, maybe first base, we'll see. But then he backs it up with this huge October. You go into the offseason feeling very good about Mark Vientos. You go into the offseason feeling great about Alvarez. Who saw that coming? The last 3 games, the guy gets on base, 8 times? It was unbelievable. Mendy was rewarded for showing the faith in sticking with Francisco Alvarez. But the other guy that you go into the offseason feeling good about is Edwin Diaz. As much as he scared you, think about what he did against the Brewers in Game 3. Think about what he did even in this game. He comes in against the top of the order and gives you 2 scoreless innings from a bullpen that couldn't stop anybody. And he actually did the job of keeping the Mets in the game. Think about it. It's 6-3, 2 scoreless innings. If the offense could take advantage of the 5 billion opportunities they had, it's a different story. So Diaz, I was good with. My issue with Diaz, when your season is on the line, you throw the pitch count out, you throw logic out. Why not have Diaz come out to start the 6th inning? And I'll tell you exactly how I would have handled it. Edwin Diaz facing a hitter for the second time in a game, that feels like a bad combination because he never does that. Well, he was about to face 8, 9, and then 1. 1 is Ohtani, who, remember, he got to foul pop-up when he came in the game in the 4th inning. Have him face Will Smith, have him face Chris Taylor, and go from there. And at that point, Reed Garrett or Ryan Stanek, take your pick on who you want to go to. So that's my one kind of bullpen critique from Carlos Mendoza. Instead, he goes to Ryan Stanek, who just didn't have it. The one thing you can't do if you're Ryan Stanek is walk Will Smith on 4 pitches. Can't happen. Can't have that happen. I don't want to forget Phil Maton. Phil Maton's the other one who gave up the 2-run home run to Will Smith. That was the other killer. Because Maton comes in, he gets the first 2 guys out, and if it's 4-1 going in the 4th inning, we're not feeling good, but you feel like you have a chance. The 2-run home run to Will Smith was the ultimate kick in the balls. So no issue with Diaz other than maybe pushing him for a few other batters. Stanek clearly didn't have it. You go to Reed Garrett. And then, go to Kodai Senga. Why the hell not? I mean, you don't have a lot of great options. So bullpen management in a no-win situation, that is Game 6, I don't have huge issues with Carlos Mendoza. But here are the issues. And this defined the series. Let's go through it. We mentioned the 1st inning. Runner on second or 1st and 2nd, 2 outs after the Dodger miscue. Marte flies out. They put together a 2-out rally in the 2nd inning, a walk by Alvarez, a base hit by Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo, who I think just, I don't want to kill him because he's obviously compromised. Clearly. So I guess our only critique would be, hey, Carlos, maybe the guy to sit wasn't Jose Iglesias. Maybe the guy to sit was Brandon Nimmo because Jose Iglesias was slumping. That's really all it was, unless there's an injury we're not aware of. Brandon Nimmo was compromised, but he put together just a dandy 0 for 5 while making limited good contact. So 2 on, 2 out in the 2nd inning, they fail. 3rd inning, put a rally together. Pete Alonso has that infield hit. Jesse Winker does a great job of drawing the walk against the lefty Anthony Banda. Thank you very much, by the way, to Carlos Mendoza for not pinch hitting him. I got nervous. I got to be honest with you. When I saw Banda come in, I'm thinking he's not going to go to J.D. Martinez. He better not, because it's 1 at-bat. It's a 3rd inning at-bat. After that, the Dodgers don't have any other lefties. So Winker rewards him by drawing a walk. Tyrone Taylor gets hit. You got bases loaded, 2 out. Before that, you 2 on and 1 out. Marte hits that little crappy foul pop-up, and Jeff McNeil strikes out. And I know what everybody was thinking when McNeil struck out, especially on an 0-2 dirt ball. Really, why are we playing Jeff McNeil? That's what we were thinking. Though my thought, if we're going to Monday morning quarterback this, is maybe the guy to sit was Brandon Nimmo, like we talked about. But another missed opportunity. You got bases loaded, 2 outs. You're in the game. You're right there. You have a chance to get yourself back in it. They fail. 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position in the first 3 innings. 7 guys left on base. 7. That's almost tough to do. 4th inning, Vientos hits the 2-run home run. Great. They get the leadoff man on the 5th. They fail. They load the bases up in the 6th. Jesse Winker flies out the left. They put 2 on in the 7th. Alvarez sack fly. Lindor strike out. Like, they just had a million opportunities. And I think coming into this game, knowing you're facing the Dodger bullpen and knowing Manaea's compromised and knowing how good this Dodger offense is, they were going to have to score 7 or 8 runs. Obviously, it would have turned out to be more, considering how many LA put on the board, 10. But they could not fail with all those great offensive opportunities, and they did. And it's kind of the story of the series in a way. I don't want to say it's the story of the season. Look, the story of the season is somehow these bastards got to the 7th game of the NLCS. I mean, that's probably ultimately the story, or the 6th game of the NLCS. Thinking ahead. I was hoping it'd be the 7th game of the NLCS. But failed opportunities. Failed opportunities after failed opportunities after failed opportunities. And you're watching this game, and unfortunately I'm a Jet fan, so I'm also watching the Jet game. And what a freaking disaster that was. What the Steelers went on like a 17-0 run? That was a mess and a half. I mean, this was an absolute brutal night if you're a Met Jet fan. Luckily, the Liberty won the WNBA title, and obviously, congratulations to the Yankees. Yippity-doo-dah. How are we feeling, Pete? You hanging in there? Or you Pete fell asleep.
No, I was actually halfway through a transition to hear one of your staff members. I think Positive Tommy is making a heel turn. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. Fully seen.
What do you mean?
I see he put out some stupid video, and I was tempted to watch it. So I don't know. We can watch it together if you really want to. But
not interested. I got to be honest.
No,
with you. I love Tommy. I'll deal with him all week. I have no interest in Positive Tommy right now.
Good. Well, good. Because let me vent for 2 seconds because
please vent.
You nailed it with the Nimmo stuff, and I kept on saying this when I read the lineup for Game 5. So this is not a Monday morning quarterback type of thing. I said this for Game 5. Nimmo was the guy that needed to be sat. If you wanted to play McNeil, get McNeil's bat in there, put him in left field, or if it, because here's my thing is the defense took a hit with this lineup the way it was. I know we like Tyron Taylor in center field, but he's I'm sorry, Bader is a better defensive center fielder than Taylor. You could have put Taylor in left field, or you could have put McNeil in left field, or whatever the case is. Iglesias needed to play second base. It was sloppy. There was so much defensive slop this entire game today, which that was part of the reason why they lost. You can't listen. You can strand runners on base as long as you want. If you are defensively sound, you could stay in a game. Yeah, I understand you. The ball went out of the ballpark a couple times, but those would have been solo shots, not 2-3 run home runs. You know, I mean, come on. So that pissed me off a lot.
Yeah, the Nimmo thing is tough because I think there's a difference between Jose Iglesias and Brandon Nimmo. As much as Brandon, or I should say Jose, was Mr. OMG and the music and how important he was to this roster, Jose Iglesias, it felt, and this is going to be part of the decision-making for next year, did a lot of this with mirrors, where you're like, hey, he's a nice player, but he's not this. Brandon Nimmo has a long track record. He's a core player of this team, and it's much more difficult to sit him down. And I think what you've got to do, and I think I mentioned this about a week ago when we talked about this, is you got to look into his eyes. You got to talk to him. That's where a manager is really a manager, where you look into his eyes and say, Brandon, how the hell do you feel? Can you help this team? He hurt them offensively in this game. Look, the margin for error that the Mets created because of their pitching just being dunzo and the Dodgers being really good. I don't want to shortchange that the Dodgers, I mean, the LA Dodgers scored the most runs ever in a best-of-7 series, and they did it in 6 games. Like, a lot of it is them, and they deserve a lot of credit. I know we don't enjoy doing that. Last thing we want to do is credit Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Tommy Edman and Kiki Hernandez because right now we hate all of them, at least for 4 days. And then you've got to transition because it's the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series. But they had so little margin for error. They were going to have to score 10, 11 runs. And by the way, the same thing was going to be the case in Game 7. I don't know how much Luis Severino had left. Walker Buehler was great in his earlier start. I'm not sure he would have been the same electric self, kind of like how the Mets figured out Jack Flaherty. But the Mets were going to have to score a lot of runs. By the way, you mentioned the defense. It turned out to not kill them. But there was a double play ball that Jeff McNeil bobbled. So that was a little bit of a miscue. It turned out to be an inning where it didn't come back and kill him. Obviously, Pete Alonso had the mental mistake. We're on the bunt by Chris Taylor in the 6th inning. He decides to try to throw to second base. You know what that is? That's Pete Alonso knowing the score, knowing they can't give up another run, and just trying a little bit too much. And look, Pete Alonso's defense was fine overall in this game. He made that great diving play, got bailed out by Edwin Diaz on the offline throw. He made a very good catch to end the 1st inning in foul territory. So it's not like Pete Alonso was a butcher, but that wasn't a defensive miscue that was physical. That was a mental mistake. That was literally Pete Alonso just trying to do too much. But look, this comes down to the fact that the Mets needed to just outscore the LA Dodgers. They were going to have to do that. And look, their offense came up very big throughout the conclusion of this season. You also needed to take advantage of those early opportunities because you know how good the Dodger bullpen is. We saw how good Blake Trinan is getting the final 6 outs. Those guys early, the Anthony Bandas, the Ben Kasparias, those are the guys you got to hit. And the Mets had opportunities, and they absolutely failed. So here's the deal with Rico Brogna. We will continue to Rico a lot. I have to admit, I thought maybe we would take a little bit of a break, but there's a lot to talk about. The one thing, though, that I do think is important if we're going to have fair discussions about this season is to actually give the season recap, the emotions of this season, a little bit more time before you can fairly judge what this year was. So I think our quick transition for the offseason, Rico, is A, kind of putting a bow on this series and what went wrong, and then looking right into the free agent decisions the Mets have to make. Because unlike last year where we could start talking off seasons in late August, like the World Series starts on Friday. We'll see how long it goes. And then as soon as the World Series ends, it's the off season. Like it's boom. Decisions need to be made. So we don't have a lot of time. And it's going to be tough because I think there's an emotional attachment to a lot of these players. I mean, Sean Manaea is one of them. You know, are we going to think about his final start, 2+ innings, 5 runs? Are we going to think about, well, he's in his 30s. Did he fix his career? Is he like this top line starting pitcher? And do you pay him as such? So, and then obviously Pete Alonso, which is probably the most difficult one. So there's a lot to get to. We'll do it over the next few days. But right now, Met fans, go to freaking sleep. That's what I want to do. I want to cry myself to sleep, and I'm going to go to sleep. I haven't cried yet. I wonder if as my head hits the pillow, Pete, there'll be like a tear or two thinking about what could have been and how, man, I can't believe the season is over.
Yeah, I got to be honest right now. Like, I'm just in this, like, I don't feel like the season has ended because it wasn't supposed to end this way. I still feel like you go through all the storybooks, you know, the storybook endings. That was supposed to be this year. And the one thing I want people to realize, anybody that goes, well, they're so close, they're right. This team is going to be so different next year.
No doubt.
And rightfully so. It's not – this team was never on paper, you and I agreed, was never on paper supposed to win World Series, but there was something special since June 1st and on that this team had an edge to them and could have carried them to the World Series. And these are the teams that do it, not a team that's always stacked. I understand the Dodgers spent a ton of money or whatever. They got Ohtani, they got Yamamoto, they got the guys they needed in the offseason, and they're going. Okay, but that doesn't always happen. It doesn't always work that way. So we can have the hell of a freaking offseason and still not be there.
Well, and that's the sad part because my expectation, and it's been this way for a while now, I think we talked about it last year during the offseason, is that they're going to have a big offseason. They're going to be very uber aggressive at trying to sign top-line free agents. The Met fan going into spring training 2025 is going to have a very different feeling than the Met fan going into spring training 2024. We're no longer going to be the little engine that could, shocking the world, OMG, this is fun. Like the Mets, I expect, are going to have a big aggressive offseason, and they're going to be a favorite. And we're going to go into the playoffs similar to what the Yankee fans have, and to a degree the Dodger fans have, where it's like, you better win. This was, hey, this is fun, but they and us soon will have a you better win kind of vibe. And look, I did have a you better win kind of vibe just because of the magic that was occurring. And like you said, sometimes it's tough to recreate that magic. You may have a better team next year. You may have a more talented team next year, and you get knocked out in the division series. Look, the Philadelphia Phillies are a great example of that. They were better this year than they were last year and the year before. and they got knocked out sooner. So you never know in baseball. And I do agree. There is a part of me that when I put my head on the pillow is going to be thinking about, oh, there's a game tomorrow. Unfortunately, there is not. And unfortunately, you're right, Pete. This Met team in 2025 is going to be very, very different than 2024. As far as, was this a good season? Was this a successful season? Was this a fun season? I could give you an answer right now, but it ain't the real answer. The real answer is letting a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks, to let it marinate in your head. Because right now I'm sad and pissed. I'm mostly sad, but there's a little bit of pissed offness from the missed opportunities that they had in this game. So we'll have another Rico over the next few days. We'll kind of put a bed to this season and start to look ahead to the offseason. But we appreciate everybody that's been along for the ride. But it ain't over. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you may say, I'm done. It's not Met season anymore. But the Rico is 365, baby. The Rico goes all year. Hoff will tell you, we don't stop Ricoing. So off-season's for wimps, damn it.
I do want to say one thing before we hang up, because again, off-season is going to begin, but we're going to have a lot of recaps of whatever. It's been a pleasure. The last month has been awesome with you. You've been freaking killing it, and I think every Met fan out there that listens, dude, you don't understand how many people have been listening to this podcast because of you, and you gave everyone here a gift. So just thank you very much, Evan. You're the man.
Well, I've done nothing, but thank you very much. I'm just the guy talking into a microphone. That is all. But there'll be a lot to talk about on the Fan. Monday, 2 o'clock. The Yankees are going to the World Series. The Mets season is over. The Jets are a disaster. The Giants are a disaster. The Knicks basketball season's about to start. And the New York Liberty won a WNBA title. Thank you very much for being along for the ride, downloading, listening, and subscribing to Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.